Qual foi a sua experiência em escrever o livro Perigoso para Garotos?
When I was first published, I had the book came out, and then it was 18 months after I had written it. So that was, and the publishers were comfortable with that, 18 months in a lead time. So I thought, well, I can take some of that time and write another book. And I remember I never thought it was going to be a big seller. I thought it was going to be a small hobby book, just for me, for my brother, for our kids. I never thought it would be successful. So I agreed with him. He was an actor and a director, and he took time off from his life and came to live with me for 6 months, and we worked together in a shed. And it was enormous fun, because we played marbles and built, a bow and arrow and threw paper aeroplanes at each other. And at the end of each day, I would finish the chapter and put it away, and it was done. And that was great, because if you're writing historical fiction, you have to keep the whole book in your head at all times, and that can be quite a struggle. With this, I could write a chapter and then it was done, and the next day I was on to, Conkers, or writing a completely different thing. So it was a wonderful experience. And my brother said to me, "Do you think it'll ever be a bestseller?" And I said no. I said, "Look, there are many books published each year," and I gave him a very patronizing lecture about the number of books published and the fact that it's very hard to ever get into best-selling lists. And then it outsold every other book I had ever published, which he says is down to him, which I find very annoying to this day. So yes, it was a very positive experience. I can't complain about it at all. It did take my lead time from finishing a book to it being published down to 11 months, all in all, which is a little bit tight sometimes, because the publishers like me to have the next one ready, I think in case I die, just to have the next one ready before the book comes out. So it's a little bit tight now, but it was worth it. The publishers also think about heart attacks. Okay. I'll stop there.
Olá, eu gostaria de saber sua opinião sobre livros que baseiam em história e misturam ficção, como Da Vinci e os Demônios.
Could you repeat that, please? Your microphone stopped working.
Eu gostaria de saber o que você acha sobre livros que misturam ficção e história real, como Anjos e Demônios e Código da Vinci.
I hated Angels and Demons. I will say I thought that was one of the worst books I've ever read. But I like the Da Vinci Code very much. Angels, no, I won't even start talking about Angels and Demons. No, I won't. I really won't. That wouldn't be fair. But I thought that the Da Vinci Code was fascinating. Like a lot of people, I went onto the internet afterwards and I looked at pictures of the Last Supper, and I looked at a picture of John the Baptist by Leonardo da Vinci, where John the Baptist looks very much like a woman, and I realized that actually, for the style of his time, he often painted men as quite feminine figures, and in fact, Dan Brown could have been talking complete rubbish, but it was a fascinating subject, just obviously wrong. As for the idea, the basic idea of mixing fact and fiction, that is in a way what I do. So I cannot criticize it really thoroughly, although I do not recommend Angels and Demons to anybody. I will just say about Angels and Demons that the illegitimate son of the Pope, yes, the Pope, the illegitimate son of the Pope kills his father, the Pope, and parachutes out of a helicopter, surviving only because he had a raincoat with him. Yes, that was when I began to lose interest in angels and demons. Okay, I will stop it at that point because it's not fair. It's not, Dan Brown is not here, and I'm sure he could defend himself. Yes.
Primeiro, agradecer pelo excelente trabalho que você faz nos livros. A narração histórica é sensacional. E eu queria saber o seguinte, quando você é um escritor, você coloca suas ideias de uma tal forma, só que os editores podem ter alguma influência no trabalho depois, e não sei se eles chegam a alterar a história ou alguma coisa do tipo. E se quando você alcança o sucesso, essa relação muda.
Yes, it does. You can tell with J.K. Rowling, you can tell with almost anyone who writes a series of books that the books get bigger and bigger and bigger. And this is because the editor has less and less control as the writer goes on through the series. It is just a fact. The J.K. Rowling, the Harry Potter books are very large towards the end. An editor can make changes. I've always been very lucky that I've had good editors, so I don't know what it would be like to have a bad one. The most extreme change I experienced was I wrote a book called The Field of Swords, which is the third book in Julius Caesar, and a lady called Susan Watt, who was the editor then, said to me, you could cut the first 5 chapters, rename chapter 6 as chapter 1, and we would have lost effectively nothing. So I looked at it, and she was right. She was right. So I did that, and it starts now on what was once chapter 6. I have now lost the first 5 chapters, annoyingly. I should have kept them, but computers, I lost them. So editors can make, that's a pretty big change by most people's standards. I also have a fact-checking person who goes through and decides if he has an incredible eye. He will spot if I've used the wrong name or the wrong spelling, or in a previous book, 3 books ago, I might have described a town as Manoa, and I pronounce it here as, I write it as Manoaoa, or and he will spot it. That's impressive, because I can't always do it. I don't always see every mistake. And if I'm doing non-fiction, I also send it to a fact-checking lady who's an ex-librarian, and she checks everything without being able to use the internet. That's the one thing I say to her. She can't use the internet. And that's worth it again, because, still, even then, there will be mistakes, and it drives me up the wall. You can't avoid all mistakes, but a good editor will, polish a book. I hope, as I get more experience, that I don't need to have the first 5 chapters cut very often. But that's when you need somebody else to cast a professional eye. And I've always assumed that they are people who know their business. I've always tried to be professional. I've always tried not to be the kind of delicate artiste who will throw a tantrum and throw glasses against the wall because somebody dared to touch my beautiful work. If somebody says that it isn't working, then I look at it again. I don't think this person is an idiot, because that is their job. So I try to be professional about this. I prefer to work like that. I'm ridiculously proud of the fact that I have never missed a deadline. Yeah, I shouldn't be proud of that. I really shouldn't. Douglas Adams once said that he enjoyed deadlines. He particularly enjoyed the odd sound they make as they whooshed past. I couldn't live like that. I really couldn't. For me, I have to have a deadline, and I have to meet it every time. Otherwise, I would just be crippled.
Você consegue se imaginar escrevendo livros diferentes de história, ficção baseada em história, ficção pura?
Yes, I wrote. I'm sure it hasn't been published in Brazil. It was a small thing I did for a British publisher. They asked me to do something adult that was not pornographic. That was the description. So I wrote a very dark story about one brother killing another brother, which was enormously pleasurable for me to write. But it was fun. I did everything different. It was set in the modern day. I set it in a town I knew. I wrote it in the first person, so I used I all the way through. and it was enormous fun. I love to write. I was 20 years unable to, if you like, have my voice heard. Now that the publishers have been foolish enough to open the door to me, they will find it very difficult to stop. They will find it a flood that will continue, I hope, for many years. I love to tell stories. I am quite happy. I would be quite happy to sit here and tell you stories. You know, this is something I enjoy doing. I don't know why, it's in my genes. As I say, my mother was a history teacher. My father is ancient, so he's seen most of history. My great-grandfather was a Shanachie, which is an Irish storyteller. It's good fun. It's good fun. I'm losing focus now, so I'll stop that. I'll stop that answer before I ramble on.